Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Welcome to the 2021 Edgemont High School Baccalaureate Program. On behalf of the Edgemont Ministerial Association, I'd like to warmly welcome all of you who are here. Probably most of you are traveling from many places, especially on this holiday weekend, so thank you for being here for these 8 graduates that will celebrate their commencement immediately following. My name is Father Grant Gerlach, but you didn't come here to see me. You came here to be with these graduates today, and so let us invoke God's blessing upon this time together so that we may ask for His gracious Spirit to be with us. So, gentlemen, please remove your caps and hats. Bow your head and pray for God's blessing. Heavenly Father, you remind us that today that you have given us the victory in your Son, Jesus Christ, that we have been given the Spirit by you to call upon you as not only Father, but Abba. Graciously send this Spirit again upon us once more during this time together. Console us with this gift of your divine love. Allow us to revel in your presence, just as these graduates, their family and friends have come together this day to revel in the accomplishment in this marked time in their life. Allow this time to be in your good and gracious presence. Allow us to experience the joy that these graduates feel this day and these days forward. May we continue to celebrate with them this occasion, with your goodness, with your joy. We ask all this in humble confidence, for we ask it in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who is our life-giving Lord, now and forever. Amen. Please be seated.
short, brief time of studying in the Edgemont schools, and I really enjoyed it. And this is just a great opportunity and an honor to be able to bring a verse of the Bible to you. You know, you spend all these years being educated in knowledge and understanding. And there was a king back in the old days. His name was King Solomon. And he was asked, what is one thing you want? And Solomon told God that he wanted wisdom. We're talking godly wisdom. You know, the world has wisdom, but God has better wisdom. And I'm going to read out of the book of Proverbs, chapter 1, start with verse 1. And it says here, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. To understand a proverb and interpretation of the words of the wise, their dark sayings, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. You know, knowledge is the fact or conditions of being aware of something. Wisdom is the ability to discern, have insight, good sense. And like I said, godly wisdom is way better than the world's wisdom. Because I'm going to tell you what the world's going to say. When you get out into the world, you go to college, you go to a trade school, you get out into the world. If you're a believer of Jesus Christ, they're going to say that you're a fool. But even a smart apostle named the Apostle Paul wrote to the church at Corinth and said, for the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us which are saved, it is the power of God. So remember that. Seek the wisdom of God and His discernment, His understanding, and you'll go a long ways in your life. Because God has a purpose for every one of you who are graduating. There's a purpose, there's a time and a season for everything. And you are embarking on a new season in your life. Don't forget God. Don't forget His wisdom. Solomon could have anything in the world, and he chose to understand God's wisdom. And that's what I have for you today. So don't forget who God is when you go off to school.
Good afternoon, everybody. I get the great opportunity to step out of the principal role for a moment and with my lovely wife next to me step into the role of pastor. We both co-pastor Bethel Church here in Edgemont, and it's an absolutely pleasure to speak to you today, to speak to the family and friends of these amazing graduates. You know, well, students, you didn't come up to me and ask me, hey, Mr. Zacco, would you please speak to us today? You're stuck with me. So, you know, as I was pondering this, a thought came to my mind. Actually, a question came to my mind. It was, what makes somebody a good public speaker? And I thought, hey, you know, I'm a relatively good speaker, but realistically, I have two flaws when it comes to speaking, and there's a few over here who know them, and there's a few over here that know them. Number one, I'm a crier, so I apologize. And I tend to get a little long-winded, especially when I speak to kids. So I hope that neither of those is an issue today, but I just want to tell you that I'm just honored to be here today. You know, oftentimes when we are looking to find somebody to speak to us, we look to find somebody who is much older, someone who has lived a life full of experiences, someone who can tell us what life is really going to be like. Someone who can just give us some good advice that we can hold on to that will carry us through our next chapters of life. Well, a little over a month ago, when I was starting to think about what possibly could I say to this group of kids, when I was first thinking about writing this message, I gave them all a homework assignment. And they looked at me with a look like, Mr. Zacco, you are aware we're working on senior project right now, and we really don't have time for this. So a few of them jumped up right away and wrote it, and a few of them I had to come back and ask for a little bit later.
But I asked them to share some words with me. I wanted to hear from them. I wanted to hear from those who had lived their lives. I wanted some of their wisdom so that I could stand up here and share some of mine. I wanted to know those moments in your school careers that you had found the most difficult, that you found the most rewarding, that you found the most memorable. I learned from them, and in some cases, I was absolutely blown away by your wisdom. I learned that senior project was almost unanimously the most challenging aspect of their high school careers. I learned from a few of them quite unintentionally that grammar was an area they still needed to work on. For example, I asked the students to share with me the funniest moment that they had experienced in school. And a couple of you misread the question completely and possibly thought that I wasn't good with grammar either. Because you see, a couple of you thought that I asked about the funnest part of your time at Edgemont High School. And while the responses were enjoyable, let me tell you that the most fun may be a better way to describe a time. The most fun is not funniest, it's most fun. But really, a better way to describe a time that was filled with an enjoyment. So I learned from you. I learned that a life filled with enjoyment, even by students who work so hard academically, is absolutely something to cherish. I heard about a time that Trace and Cadence put a dummy in a school Suburban, causing Harley to question the health and the sanity of anyone who would sit in a school car for 5 cold days. I learned about Mr. Corbett's floating fish, who were apparently tired, not dead, from all the action in science class. I learned about a time when WWE was role-played in another class, causing a table to be broken in half. But most importantly, I learned that these 8 students are sentimental and they're family-orientated, even when family describes those people who are not blood-related. When I asked what they hoped they never forgot, they spoke about the amazing education that they received in Edgemont. They spoke about how people cared about them and ensured that they had learned as much as they possibly could. They spoke of fun and good times that they hoped stuck with them for a lifetime. So for all of you, obviously 18 years or so has been a lifetime. But let me tell you that the next 18 years are going to fly by in a blink of an eye. Someday you're going to be in a situation where a younger person's going to look at you and they're going to say, give me some advice. And I know that you're already prepared in many ways to share the profound wisdom that you have because you've already shared it with me. I know that you would tell people to enjoy every moment that is fun because life gets hard. I know you would tell them to be careful when they select their friends. I know you would tell them that possibly the loudest and funniest kids in class aren't actually the coolest ones. You would tell them to be kind, to hold on to themselves, to hold on to who they really are. You would tell them to keep their head up, even when it's hard, and not take anything for granted because you never know when it could be gone. You're some of the wisest people that I've ever had a chance to meet, even with the little life experiences you've had. I believe that God has been working in your lives, and He has already made an impact, even when you were unaware. You see, God doesn't use the strongest people in this world. He doesn't use the ones with the most money, the fanciest cars, and the people who have it all together. The book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 1, verse 27 says, but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. I want you to hold on to that one. I want you to think about somebody from the Bible that I'm sure that you've heard about. I want you to think about David. Most of you know the story of the little shepherd boy who defeated a giant with a slingshot and a stone. But I imagine that many of you don't know the transition from a small boy to a warrior, to a king, to a man who sinned horribly, and finally to a man who was completely forgiven. See, David can teach us many life lessons, and I'd like to share a few of those with you today. The first lesson is a heart for God prepares us to be used by God. A man named Samuel was given a task, and his task was to replace a king named Saul. The book of 1 Samuel 13:14 says that the Lord sought out a man after his own heart to be king, and Saul simply was not that man. At a very young age, David was chosen to be king because he had what Saul did not. He had a heart for God. When Samuel went to anoint the new king of Israel, he assumed David's strong and noble and oldest brother must be the chosen one. However, God told Samuel not to focus on physical strength. He said, "Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not a man sees. A man looks on outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." See, David's heart for God prepared him to be used by God. Our impressive resumes are what make us useful in God's kingdom. The first lesson we learn from David's life is the importance of cultivating a heart for God above all else. The second lesson, the Spirit of God equips us to do the will of God. See, the lives of David and Saul make it crystal clear that if we want to do God's will, we must be filled with the Spirit. Although Saul is filled with the Spirit, his disobedience soon fades, and it causes the Spirit to depart from him and instead rush upon David. And without the Spirit, we are powerless to fulfill the role to which God has called us as Christians. The Spirit enables us to obey God. The Bible assures us that if we walk by the Spirit, we won't gratify the desires of the flesh. So today, on that note, I want to warn you of something. I want to warn you as you leave your family's home and you go out into the world, there's going to be many opportunities for sin. There's going to be many paths that lead towards destruction and many avenues that can change a person in ways in which you don't want to be changed. The Spirit's presence in us results in a fruit which makes this world a better place. I'm sure you've heard of these words: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and possibly most important, self-control. That is why we must pray to be filled with the Spirit. We must pray that the Spirit fills us and protects us and guides us. Lesson 3. It's better to fear God than to be 9 feet tall. We all know the story of David and Goliath, and David's defeat of Goliath is one of the most vivid examples of what a fear of God can actually accomplish. See, David feared God more than he feared Goliath, so he was not intimidated by this 9-foot giant before him. David believed that the promise of God more than anything, David believed the promises of God more than he feared Goliath. The Lord had promised the Israelites that they would conquer the Philistines, and David trusted him. See, God wants the same kind of fear to be a part of our lives. If we fear God more than we fear anything else, we will be able to obey and please him in powerful ways. The book of 1 Samuel 17:45 says, David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, who you have defied." Lesson 4. The glory of David is not David at all. The glory is Jesus Christ. See, David was a shepherd boy who was appointed king at a very young age. He was a small boy, perhaps maybe 15 years old, when he defeated the giants. He became king at the age of 30, and he ruled for 40 years. David was a very young man when he became a leader. He was even younger when he was first selected to lead. How is it possible that a young boy could defeat a giant? How is it possible that a young man could become king and lead so many people in a time of greatness that has never been achieved since? How is it possible? Because David is really a picture of the greater champion, who is Jesus Christ. David defeated the enemy and he delivered a nation in one battle for a short time. Jesus Christ defeated the enemy, the devil, the sin, and death, and he delivered his people for all time. So as humans, we're called to lead. We're called to do great things, but I have a surprise for you. We're not strong enough to do most of those great things on our own. We must have faith in God and the saving power of Jesus to make us strong, to help us to help us to fight his good fight. The last lesson, lesson 5, sin can bring horrible consequences, but sin can be forgiven. See, David was great, but David was human after all. And because of that, David was not immune from sin. It tells us in the Bible that one night in Jerusalem, King David was walking upon his rooftop when he spotted a beautiful woman across the way. David asked his servants about her, and he was told that she was Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. one of David's mighty men. And despite her marital status, David summoned Bathsheba to his place, and the rest is history. Like many poor choices in life, David's one moment in time led to a cascade of troubles and further sin. See, David took Bathsheba and had her husband killed, and he sins in so many ways. And the Lord wasn't silent or indifferent to them at all. In fact, he promised to bring the sword upon David's house, and the result, that sword took 4 of David's sons. But there's forgiveness in the life of David as well. After Nathan the prophet confronted David for his sins, David confesses. David's true repentance is matched by the Lord's forgiveness, and in the end, God's forgiveness far surpasses any consequences we might experience. Consequences can only last for a lifetime, but forgiveness lasts forever. See, David is a classic example of what life can truly be like. Each and every person has ability, naturally. I've witnessed it from meeting all of you. You have natural abilities. I have a surprise for you. You get no credit for that whatsoever. However, as we develop those abilities and what we do with them, that will say a lot about you as a person. David was really known for 4 things. First and foremost, David was a shepherd. His shepherding showed him to be patient. It showed him to be faithful and brave. See, shepherding, although I've never been there, can be stiflingly boring. Performing a task faithfully with a good attitude, which David did, required patience, reliability, and faithfulness, all desirable qualities. It also required bravery, because you see, sheep are vulnerable to predators, and according to David, he defended his flock against lions and bears. Second, David was a musician. His musical ability showed him to be reflective and thinking. He wrote songs, and many were included in the book of Psalms. This means he was thinking and reflecting type, an exercise that onlookers, or to onlookers, appears to be a waste. Thinking and reflecting take time. Thinkers look like they're doing absolutely nothing. I know, I watched some of you. Thinkers look like they're doing nothing, but David showed us that the outcome of deep reflection can be quite useful. We still read and are encouraged by all of the things that David wrote. David illustrates the fact that every big idea starts out as nothing more than a thought process. David was a warrior. His skills as a warrior showed him to be a cautious man. I think we often think about warriors as people who walk into every situation with the sword first. Every conflict is a fighting matter, but David wasn't like that. Even when it appeared to be the best option. See, David had a chance to kill King Saul on 2 separate occasions, and his associates encouraged him to do so, but he held back. He knew it was a short-sighted solution to a big problem. This is noteworthy because Saul, for whom David loyally and effectively in battle was jealous of David, was trying to kill him. Saul had spread vicious rumors about David. Defending oneself against such treachery is completely understood. Who would have blamed him? But David was quite proficient in the use of weapons, but they were never his first choice when relationships got a little sticky. And finally, like all of you, David was human. His humanness actually reflected his spirituality. David was just as capable of sinning as anyone, but is noteworthy because of his response. See, David admitted his guilt. He accepted the consequences, and he never found excuses. His sinfulness didn't define him, it didn't consume him. In fact, it simply humbled him and enabled him to be merciful and forgiving towards others. David's faith possessed him, it pushed him, it moved him. In fact, it was compelling. He couldn't hear Goliath's threat and not respond. He couldn't think about God and truth without writing down his thoughts. He couldn't consider what he had written without putting it into a song. And he couldn't honor God and not bring the ark to Jerusalem. For David, believing and acting were synonyms. The book of James 2:18 says, "Show me your faith without works, and I'll show you mine by my works." In other words, we're not defined by our works, but if we have faith, let's put them to action. David wasn't the first or the last to actively believe, but he definitely was one of the best models. So seniors, As you head out into the world, as you start this next chapter in your life, I ask you to consider the life of David. I ask you to never believe that you are too young to do great things. I ask you to never believe that you are too small or too insignificant to defeat giants. I ask you to believe that you have the power to lead and the power to change the world. And finally, you're going to make mistakes. Never be afraid to admit when you're wrong or to ask for forgiveness. See, we're given the gift of grace. And grace is forgiveness that we simply do not deserve. But it's yours simply by asking and believing that it's there. I wish you all prosperity and a great future. God bless.
I'm Samantha Miller, and I'm a member of Trinity Lutheran Church here in Edmont. And I also have the good fortune of being the librarian here at Edmont School. And I've had the honor of getting to know the senior class over the last couple of years. When I was a senior in high school, I had a youth pastor that made a huge impact on my life. This was not that I was had on a lot of you. A few years ago, he wrote a book of prayers. And if there's one thing that these seniors know about me, it's that I like to talk about books. I would like to read one of these prayers for you guys today. So if you guys could please bow your heads with me as I read Prayer of Transition. Dear God, transition happens in life. Sometimes I choose change. Sometimes change is chosen for me. Sometimes it is predictable. Sometimes it is totally unexpected. Transitions happen in my life. I am taking an exit and looking for the next entrance. I am saying goodbye to people and to normal and to a stage of life. I need your comfort and your presence during this time of transition. I move into this new season of life with both excitement and anxiety. Let me be grateful to you for the people who have shaped and formed me. Thank you for the many life experiences that have brought me to where I am. Lead me and guide me in this season of transition. Saturate my life with grace so that I may mend, enjoy, and dream. Shape my mind with wisdom so that I may grow. Fill me with courage so that I don't let fear limit my future. Bless me with friends who will walk with me as I move forward in life. Transition me from where I am to where you want me to be. Amen. Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Nancy Zock, and I'm the co-pastor at Bethel Church here in Edmont. Over the last couple of weeks, just preparing for graduation and for transitions in our life, I always try to find the right words to say at the most appropriate time and make sure it's appropriate and mature. And as some of you know, that's really not my gifting. So last week, I had the opportunity to celebrate with Chandler and his family at our church to celebrate his accomplishments in graduation. And as we were preparing for that, I sat at our dining room table with a blank screen on my laptop. And my son was pacing back and forth. And one thing a lot of people don't know is I love to write. And I think when he was watching me struggle to find the right words to share with Chandler, he reached behind me and he overtook my keyboard and he wrote a message. And he said something along the lines, what does your life look like, or live the life that you can that's going to impact and change the world? And I was like, wow, like that is what I need to hear, but that is the message that I shared with Chandler, and he got an opportunity to celebrate his accomplishments, and I challenged him with that. What is his life going to bring to the world, to change the world, to impact this world for good? And what does that look like? As I was sitting up here, I was looking at the eight of you, and I'm at a loss for words. Some of you I know very well, some of you very little. But one thing that really stood out to me is your God-given gifts and talents. They are unique, and they're unique only to you. Those talents and gifts make up who you are. And when when you are given those gifts, God gives you those gifts to impact the world, to change the world, to help people grow and to understand, and to use those things to impact. And so before I close for the benediction today, I want you first of all to think about how you will live your life journey, the steps from this day forward, how you're going to live your life to impact the world around you, for those of the paths that you cross. How will you use the things that God has instilled you when He created you for good? And I challenge you to live a life along your journey to impact this world for good. I'd like to close in a moment of prayer. Lord God, we ask for your almighty hand to be upon all those who are graduating here today in Edgemont. Bless their lives from this day on with the goodness of love. Help them to stay true to their dreams, to use their gifts wisely, and to walk in the future with faith, hope, and great love. And we pray these things in your name, Lord. Amen.
So, as we close this up on behalf of the Edgemont Ministerial Association, we thank all of you for being here today. We think the world of you as graduates. We wish you nothing but the best in the future. We wish you prosperity. And humbly, we wish for you struggles, because we know within those struggles you will grow and